Our first guest tonight is an Emmy-nominated actor whose career spans over 60 years, starring in films like Escape from New York. Please welcome back to the show our friend Kurt Russell, everybody.
Kurt Russell has spent more than 6 decades in the entertainment industry, building one of the most durable careers Hollywood has ever produced. From a child actor signed by Walt Disney himself, to a major screen presence across action films, dramas, and franchises that spanned generations, Russell's name has rarely been far from the conversation. But behind the iconic roles and the long filmography sits a man who made a choice that Hollywood told him would destroy everything. At 75, he is finally talking about what that choice really meant and why he has no regrets. The boy Walt Disney signed. Understanding what Kurt Russell eventually walked away from requires understanding what he was walking away from first. Kurt Vogel Russell was born on March 17, 1951, in Springfield, Massachusetts, the son of Bing Russell, a character actor best remembered for his role as Deputy Clem on the long-running television Western Bonanza. Growing up in a household where performance was already part of everyday conversation gave the young Russell an unusual advantage. By age 11, he had already landed a part in an Elvis Presley movie called It Happened at the World's Fair in 1963, a small but significant step toward the career that was about to unfold in ways that surprised even those closest to him. Walt Disney took notice of Russell's particular combination of natural charm and discipline. In 1966, at just 15 years old, Russell was cast in Follow Me, Boys, a Disney production starring fellow Disney legend Fred MacMurray. Walt Disney himself was reportedly taken with the teenager's presence on screen, describing him as a 15-year-old boy for whom he predicted a great acting future. What followed that prediction was a formal 10-year contract with the Walt Disney Company, making Russell the studio's primary teen star through the late 1960s and into the 1970s. That kind of institutional backing was rare, and it positioned Russell inside one of the most powerful entertainment machines in the world before he had even graduated to adult roles. The Disney years produced a string of popular films. Russell played Dexter Riley in The Computer Wore Tennis Shoes in 1969, returned to the same character in Now You See Him, Now You Don't in 1972, and completed the trilogy with The Strongest Man in the World in 1975. These were not considered prestige projects, but they built an audience and gave Russell consistent screen time across a decade that many performers would have struggled simply to survive. The training itself was irreplaceable. Russell later described those years as his education in the film business, a period that taught him craft, discipline, and how a production actually functioned from the inside. Yet, the Disney contract also carried a certain ceiling. Teen comedy roles, however popular, did not guarantee a transition to serious adult work. Most child actors who flourished inside a studio system struggled to break out of the associations that followed them. The industry had a long history of swallowing its young stars whole and producing very little on the other side. Russell was aware of that pattern, and so was everyone around him. What no one could fully predict at the time was that he also had another career running alongside his acting, one that came startlingly close to pulling him away from Hollywood entirely. Russell was a genuinely gifted baseball player, not merely a celebrity dabbler, but a serious athlete who made it to the California Angels minor league system in the early 1970s. He reached the Double-A level at El Paso in 1973. That summer, while executing a double play, he suffered a rotator cuff injury that ended his baseball career before it reached the major leagues. The injury was devastating, but it also removed a question that had been hovering over his professional life for years. With baseball no longer available, acting became the only path forward. Russell threw everything into that transition at exactly the right moment, just as his Disney contract was reaching its conclusion and just as new collaborators were entering his world. The partnership that changed the entire direction of Russell's career arrived through director John Carpenter. Russell was cast in the television film Elvis in 1979, playing the legendary performer across a demanding biographical drama that required physical transformation and emotional range far beyond anything Russell had been asked to deliver before. The Emmy nomination that followed the film signaled something significant. A performer who had spent years inside a family entertainment studio had quietly developed into an actor capable of serious, complex work. That nomination opened a door that the rest of the decade would walk through with remarkable force. The decade that defined him and the warnings that followed. The 1980s remain the period most closely associated with Kurt Russell in the cultural imagination, and the reason sits squarely in his collaboration with John Carpenter. Escape from New York in 1981 introduced the character of Snake Plissken, a stoic, eye-patched anti-hero operating in a dystopian future version of Manhattan. The role required Russell to project menace and credibility in equal measure, and he delivered something that felt entirely new against the backdrop of his Disney past. Snake Plissken was not a commercial formula. The film operated outside the mainstream blockbuster tradition and found its audience through cult appreciation rather than opening weekend domination. But it established Russell as someone capable of genre work that carried genuine weight. The Thing arrived the following year, 1982, and pushed everything further. Carpenter and Russell worked together again on a horror film set in the Antarctic, built around paranoia, isolation, and an alien creature capable of imitating any organism it encountered. The film struggled commercially on its initial release, arriving in the same summer as Steven Spielberg's E.T. the Extraterrestrial, and suffering in comparison to that warmer, more commercially optimistic story. But The Thing found its legacy over the following decades, eventually earning recognition as one of the defining science fiction horror films of its era. Russell's performance as R.J. MacReady, the helicopter pilot holding a disintegrating team together, carried the picture. That grounding quality he had brought to Elvis and Snake Plissken appeared again, anchoring a film that easily could have collapsed under the weight of its practical effects and genre demands. Big Trouble in Little China in 1986 demonstrated another dimension entirely. The film blended action, comedy, and supernatural Chinese folklore into a tone that defied simple categorization. Russell played Jack Burton, a truck driver who talked with enormous confidence and delivered very little of it. A comic subversion of the action hero archetype that required precise comedic timing rather than pure physical presence. The film underperformed commercially on release, but like The Thing before it, found devoted audiences over time. Both films became cult touchstones that are still discussed and referenced decades after their initial release. By the time Tombstone arrived in 1993, Russell had proven across more than a decade that he could carry films in multiple genres without losing the believability that made his characters work. His portrayal of Wyatt Earp in Tombstone became one of the most celebrated Western performances of the decade, sharing scenes with Val Kilmer's legendary interpretation of Doc Holliday in a film that still ranks among the most rewatchable Westerns produced in the modern era. Tombstone was followed by Stargate in 1994, which placed Russell inside a science fiction epic that launched one of the more enduring franchise properties in genre entertainment. Throughout all of this activity, Russell was living somewhere that Hollywood considered a career-ending move. He had made the decision to leave Los Angeles and build a different kind of life in Colorado, and the industry had not been quiet about what it expected that choice to cost him. People in positions of influence told him directly that the move would end everything. No actor was doing this at the time. No major star had decided that living outside Los Angeles was compatible with maintaining a career at the level Russell had reached. The warning was consistent and loud. Leave Los Angeles and leave the industry. Russell did not leave the industry. He left Los Angeles. And the difference between those two things became the central statement of everything that followed. The ranch, the warning, and what proved Hollywood wrong. At a FYC panel for his new Paramount Plus series, The Madison in Los Angeles, in May 2026, Russell spoke with People magazine about the decision he and his longtime partner Goldie Hawn made more than 4 decades ago to build their life in Old Snowmass, Colorado. The conversation revealed a man who had quietly been making a philosophical argument through his choices for 40 years and was only now receiving full credit for having been right. The move was not dramatic or sudden. Russell had developed a connection to Colorado during earlier years, drawn to the mountains, the open land, and the possibility of a ranching life that had nothing to do with studio schedules or awards season appearances. When he and Hawn got together in the early 1980s, they made a shared decision to build something permanent in Old Snowmass. That was roughly 40 years ago. Their family grew up on that ranch. Their son Wyatt Russell now lives in Colorado with his wife, actress Meredith Hagner, and their children, extending what became a generational connection to the land and the lifestyle. Russell described the appeal with characteristic directness. He wanted the things that Colorado offered on a daily basis: the nature, the mountains, the ranching life. The sense of choosing an environment because it was genuinely preferred, rather than professionally necessary. He added a line that captures everything about his outlook. The area of Old Snowmass is populated by people who live there because they want to, and he could not say the same thing about Los Angeles. That distinction between choosing a place and being required by a career to remain in a place sits at the center of how Russell has understood his own life. What made the decision remarkable was the timing and the context. No major Hollywood actor was doing this when Russell made his choice. The entertainment industry of that era was deeply centered on Los Angeles in a way that felt almost physically necessary. Visibility meant presence. Presence meant proximity to studios, executives, casting directors, and the social infrastructure of the film business. Choosing to live in Colorado was read by many as a signal that the work no longer mattered enough to stay close to it. Russell recalled people telling him directly that the choice amounted to farewell. The industry, in the assessment of people inside it, did not accommodate actors who put mountain living ahead of networking and availability. Russell's response to those warnings was simple and unwavering. He was not escaping. He was just living where he lived. He was fortunate, as he acknowledged, that it made no actual difference to the quality or volume of the work that came to him. But the luck, if it was luck, had a foundation. Russell was selective about projects in ways that gave each commitment more weight. He did not take roles out of visibility anxiety or proximity pressure. He chose work that interested him and delivered fully on each commitment, which meant that the absence of constant networking in Los Angeles did not translate into absence from major films. His filmography across the decades after leaving Los Angeles makes the original warnings look like a profound misreading of what a career actually requires. Backdraft in 1991, Tombstone in 1993, Stargate in 1994, Breakdown in 1997, Miracle in 2004, Death Proof in 2007, The Hateful Eight in 2015, Guardians of the Galaxy, Volume 2 in 2017, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood in 2019, and multiple entries in the Fast and Furious franchise. Each of these projects came from a man living on a Colorado ranch, not from someone embedded in the Los Angeles social ecosystem that the industry insisted was mandatory. The Madison, Family, and What 75 Looks Like When You Got It Right. The conversation around Kurt Russell in 2026 centers largely on The Madison, a neo-Western drama series created by Taylor Sheridan and released on Paramount Plus on March 14, 2026. The series follows the Clyburn family, originally from New York City, who relocate to the Madison River Valley of southwest Montana for emotional recovery following a major life-changing tragedy. Russell plays Preston Clyburn, the patriarch whose love of the Montana landscape mirrors Russell's own long relationship with the American West. Michelle Pfeiffer stars opposite him as Stacy Clyburn, and the combination of two performers with decades of screen experience produced chemistry that reviewers noted immediately. The project arrived through a combination of creative trust and practical circumstance. Russell had filming commitments for Monarch, Legacy of Monsters, the Apple TV Plus science fiction series in which he and his son Wyatt Russell shared the role of Lee Shaw across different time periods, a casting decision that gave that franchise a particular emotional texture built around an actual father and son playing the same character. When the scheduling conflict with the Madison emerged, the production made accommodations rather than recasting, a testament to how strongly Sheridan and Pfeiffer wanted Russell specifically for the role. Season 2 was filmed back-to-back with Season 1, and Season 3 has already been greenlit, suggesting a franchise investment that extends well beyond a single introductory season. Russell's decision to take on the Madison connects directly to the philosophy he has articulated about both work and life. The project aligned with where he actually lives, what he actually values, and what he finds genuinely interesting about storytelling. A narrative built around grief, family, and the healing that the natural landscape of Montana can offer did not require Russell to perform values he did not hold. He brought to the character the same quality that has defined the best work across his career: authenticity that cannot be separated from the life being lived outside the camera's frame. The family dimension of Russell's life in 2026 has also taken on a texture that earlier periods of his career could not have anticipated. Wyatt Russell, his son with Goldie Hawn, is now an established actor in his own right, having delivered widely praised work in television and film across the past decade. The Monarch, Legacy of Monsters casting brought father and son into the same project in an unusually literal way, allowing them to inhabit the same character across different decades of the story. Wyatt and his family now live in Colorado, extending the Russell family's generational relationship with the landscape that Kurt chose decades ago against the advice of an entire industry. Hawn, now 80, remains Russell's partner after more than 4 decades together. The two have never married, a choice that attracted curiosity for years from a media culture that tends to treat long-term commitment as inseparable from legal documentation. Russell has discussed that choice with characteristic clarity. The relationship has endured and deepened not despite avoiding formal marriage, but through a continuous, daily decision to build a shared life. Their children from previous relationships, Kate Hudson and Oliver Hudson from Hawn's prior marriage, and Boston Russell from Kurt's, grew up inside that unconventional but apparently solid structure, producing a blended family that has, by most visible accounts, remained genuinely close across decades. At 75, Russell has not stepped back from the work. The Madison demonstrates continued appetite for substantial, narratively demanding roles. But the shape of engagement has shifted toward exactly the kind of intentionality he has described for decades. Projects are chosen because they genuinely interest him, because the collaborators excite him, because the material connects to something he actually wants to explore. The result is a filmography that continues to grow without the desperate quality that often accompanies careers extended out of financial necessity or fading relevance anxiety. The warning that Hollywood delivered 40 years ago, that leaving Los Angeles would end everything, has been answered by 4 decades of uninterrupted work that produced some of the most memorable performances in American film and television. The people who delivered those warnings were operating from an assumption that career and geography were inseparable, that the entertainment business could only accommodate people who made it the organizing principle of their daily existence. Russell tested that assumption and found it wrong. Not defiantly, not as a philosophical experiment, but simply by deciding to live where he wanted to live and doing the work well enough that the industry continued to call. What that history exposes is a particular kind of courage that does not look like courage from the outside. Russell did not quit. He did not burn bridges or issue manifestos. He built a ranch in Colorado and kept showing up for projects that interested him, and the combination of those 2 decisions, ordinary in themselves, produced something remarkable. A 6-decade career without the corrosive compromises that usually accompany that kind of longevity. He did not sacrifice the life for the career. He chose both, and it turned out that choosing both was the most sustainable decision he could have made. When Russell talks about Old Snowmass now, the satisfaction in his voice is not nostalgia. It is recognition. He describes waking up to the sight of the mountains. He describes wanting to be in Colorado more than he can manage given his schedule. He describes his son Wyatt living there now with his own young family. The ranch that Hollywood said would end his career became the foundation everything else was built on. And at 75, with the Madison drawing new audiences and Monarch, Legacy of Monsters extending a franchise alongside his son, the career that was supposed to be over keeps finding new rooms to move through. With this, we have come to the end of this video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, do well to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. To enjoy more thrilling stories, click now on the following video that pops up on your screen.